Welcome once again to 720 and 720. This is John Schulman, and we have the most, I ain't gonna lie to you, for all of our podcasts, we have the most unique guest that we've had. We have the Director of Team Development for the Super Bowl champions, New England Patriots, Jack Easterby. Jack Easterby, welcome to 720 and 720.
Well, thank you so much for having me, John, and it's unique for me, too, because of the special relationships I have with you and your family and the Conradi family, and just humbled the overlap that we've had over the years and the fun we've had and the different things we've seen done, man. I'm humbled you'd have me on.
Well, how do you go from, here's what I want to know, how do you go from, I guess, being over at the Baylor School in charge of the, I forgot what we called that, the high school group that was like young boys from like 7 years old to 9 years old. You were the leader. You were so important in the world at that moment. You led the high school group at the UTC basketball camp. And my wife still talks about how great Jack was. He was the best you ever had. At leading those little kids through a little get in a stance, move your feet, do a couple jumping jacks routine. You went from that, son. You went from that high level of a job to now you're Bill Belichick's right-hand man. How did that happen, young man?
Well, I think, first of all, let's don't underrate flapping the floor over there at Baylor High School. I think that if you're going to put it on the spectrum, I mean, I think what you were able to do at Chattanooga, I think, to create the amount of high-character people in that environment was impressive, and it showed dividends in your leadership as a basketball coach. And so I think when you start recruiting counselors and you start getting people to come, I mean, I think as I've studied leadership over the years, I think one of the things you see is, you know, good people love and hang out usually with good people, you know, and hurt people usually hang out and give to hurt people. And so I think that you always surround yourself with good people. And that started with Coach Conradi coming up there and him inviting me to be a part of that camp and for a couple of years and just doing whatever role I was given there. And but I think to answer your question, I think we all in life, you know, we get put at forks in the road. Some of them are our choices and some of them are not our choices. And I think what you have to do is at every intersection you're at in life, you have to do right by that intersection. You know, we can't build a complete masterpiece in a day. You can't paint your life story in a moment. You have to do it day by day, hour by hour, choice by choice. And God doesn't necessarily make us winners or losers, but he does make us choosers. And so every time you get to the fork, you have to be able to make the right decision. And if you make the right decision over and over, then you can get to places that you never dreamed you'd imagine. And, you know, my experience with you and obviously college basketball, I think, really did set the table for hard work. It set the table for having responsibilities. It set the table for a lot of the small, minute things that are unseen that allowed for Bill and others as I've kind of moved on to, you know, establish trust and give me responsibility with their program. So every program matters. I wouldn't underrate the eliteness now. There might be some NBA players somewhere that came out of that camp. I don't know. Who knows?
Hey, let me just tell you something. When you say that, in a very strange way, at that camp was a young man, interesting story, was a young man, he was not in your group. We kept you down with the little kids because you had the little kid mentality. But he was in the middle group, and he got in trouble at the camp, and his brother came in at the camp and told his brother, I won't say names yet, told his brother, listen, your attitude is so bad that we're not going to let you participate at camp. And so I went up to Ricky. I said, Ricky, I think it's probably important that your brother participate because he's going to be really good. I want him to have a good experience at Chattanooga. And he said, no, Coach. He said, my mom and dad wouldn't put up with that. He's got an attitude. He needs to sit out. That kid was Rodney Hood. And Rodney Hood is now playing his fourth year in the NBA. That was the kid at that camp. So at that little camp that we had was Rodney Hood, who I guess played in the NBA World Championship last year with Cleveland and had a tough time, and showed a little bit of an attitude again back in the day. And thank God Ricky Hood's around him all the time, because Ricky can help him. But I don't know, you go, so give us where you, because you were at Newberry, so you played college basketball. They say that you're one of the best players to ever play in the SAC 8, and that is correct, Jack?
No, that's not correct. I couldn't play dead in a cowboy movie. That would be the best analogy. I started at left out, and my best thing I did was clapping, and so every day I had to have treatment on my hands because my job was to clap. And
it's not easy.
The bench was organized. It's rough down there at the end of the bench. Not everybody can do that.
Well, that's very
not
true.
Everybody can do that. So anyway, but I was at Newberry and enjoyed my experience there playing basketball and golf, and then left there and went to Jacksonville, worked for the Jaguars and salary cap administration, and it was a different CBA than we currently have in the NFL. So it was, more research on the front end of the draft. So a lot of the rookie contracts and young guys. I did that for a year and a half, and my grandparents, who had a huge hand in me being raised in Columbia, South Carolina, were diagnosed with Alzheimer's at that time, and so I left Jacksonville after about a year. Even though I had a great experience there, I came back to Columbia and just lived with my grandparents and helped them through the last several years of their life. And while I did that, I worked in the Academic Enrichment Center at the University of South Carolina. And Dave Odom took me in as his academic director. I had good grades in college, and so I started running study hall for him and traveling with them. And that led me to the opportunity to serve as their director of academic development, which led to me being involved with the student athletes of South Carolina, which led me to creating a development program for all student athletes, a character development program at South Carolina with the AD there, Eric Hyman. And then that led to opportunity to speak to a lot of teams nationally, and our players at South Carolina started leaking out and going to the NFL and going to the NBA. And so I started speaking to Team USA. I started speaking to, different NFL teams. And that led me to the Kansas City Chiefs, where I spoke to them for 2 seasons through Ryan Suckup, who was our kicker at South Carolina, was drafted Mr. Irrelevant. So speaking of, and this is, it's funny, you said that about your camp. It's kind of funny because that camp, you could even coin the term irrelevant, but the truth of it is, Mr. Irrelevant there, and then Mr. Irrelevant, who got me to Kansas City, was the last pick in the draft and gave me an opportunity to share. And then Scott Pioli took it from there, where he had me there for 2 years, just kind of working with him on character and development within the Chiefs. And then when they moved on, I was blessed with the opportunity to come to New England. And Scott called Bill. Scott had been a mastermind behind the first phase of Dynasty with the Patriots. And so, a blessing, man, a true blessing to be here. And then once I got in New England, I just, my relationship with Bill slowly but surely grew over time. And, was really a specific blessing to my family and I.
Well, I want to go back real quick back to South Carolina. I want to show to everybody, and just to be honest, Jack, this podcast is to help people and young coaches and players and business people kind of understand life. And what I try to do, I try to read a book. My ADD stops me at times, but I'm just trying to steal from you and steal one piece from you. Going back to relationships, the relationship that I had with you through Coach Conrady, and then we developed a relationship. I think of one young man. I think of Steph McDowell.
Yes.
And so Steph McDowell is transferring from the University of South Carolina. If we don't have that relationship, Steph McDowell doesn't end up at Chattanooga. If he doesn't end up at Chattanooga, we don't go to the NCAA tournament in 2009. And Steph McDowell, I still remember, and that was, people don't understand this, but that was Steph Curry's last year at Davidson in our league. And
that's right.
The wrong Steph was MVP at the Southern Conference tournament, and that was Steph McDowell, not Steph Curry. And Steph McDowell came from Jack Easterby in South Carolina. So life's about relationships. And it doesn't matter if you're the first pick in the draft or the last pick in the draft or who you are or who sees you work in camp at Baylor. because every kid, there is a Tom Brady or an Edelman out there running around right now. I mean, listen, you got a kid, you got the Davis kid from Red Bank High School in Chattanooga, plays for the Patriots.
Keontae.
Yeah.
Keontae. Yeah.
So the last time I
Yeah.
saw Keontae, he was at our gym at McCallie, working with the YCAP program in the summer, working with
Right.
disadvantaged kids.
Right. Right.
It,
Yeah. I think what you're saying is exactly right. I think when you interact with people, and this, going back to Stefan and interact with Steph at South Carolina, I think our society has so often become to treat people according to their status. We've been conditioned in our mind that, okay, you're the head coach, so you get this type of treatment, and then the janitor gets this type of treatment. I think it starts with the mentality that every person has a story.
Yeah.
Every single person has a story. And so for Steph at South Carolina, he had an amazing story, from Indianapolis area, who had great family, and had come to South Carolina with really a dream to be a big part of our team. We had not had a bunch of success, but we had enough success that he didn't get in the lineup, and he was an undersized scoring guard, and he made our practice better. And so what happened was every day he would play Chris Lofton, or he would play, different players in SEC at that time that were, and he was the best player on the floor. And so, but because of the way the structure was at the time, and several players, Trey Kelly and others that were all conference that were ahead of him, he didn't get the chance. And so again, he treated each day like it was the best thing that had happened to him, and he handled it well. And I knew that he would be a great resource for you guys as he transitioned there, as he was looking to leave. And I knew you guys would take care of him, and the kind of people you are would grow him. So it does come back to relationships. I also think, though, it comes back to things that happen before you understand they're happening. You don't understand that Julian Edelman is going to become one of the greatest players in postseason history when he's an undersized quarterback at Kent State, or when he's an undersized player, in high school, playing, backyard football growing up. You don't understand that. You don't understand
that's what I want to know from you. I just want to, how does that, because I kind of, I'm not a real creative tweeter, but I retweeted it. How does that guy who looks like the rest of us, all right, he ain't real big. Now, he don't, his arms are slightly bigger than mine, slightly. But how does that guy, who is a daggum quarterback at Kent State, become that guy? How does Tom Brady, who is picked, in late 6th round, becomes Tom Brady? How can that stuff happen, and why does it, I'm just going to be honest, it seems to always happen with the Patriots. So I think y'all got something going on up there that no one else has. So explain that to me.
Well, I think the first thing is you got to look at every decision we make. That means whether you're getting paper or plastic when you go to the grocery store, or whether you're putting what kind of gas you're putting in your car, or where you're going to live, has a multitude of factors. So when you go to make a decision on a player, or when you go to make a decision on your spouse, or when you go to make a decision on what school you're going to go to when you're growing up, I think one of the things that is unfortunately a commonality is most people do not take every factor into that decision. And for the Patriots, I can speak, very boldly that we take every factor into the decision. So whether that's position versatility with a quarterback like Julian, drafting him in the 7th round and knowing that he could play multiple positions for us, he could return punts for us. But if you're willing to ask more questions, you're going to get more answers. And so what happens is, you see this in life, most people are willing to ask questions about things that might affect them, like a spouse, or maybe financially they'll ask some questions. But they don't ask questions about every decision they make. And so, and my passion is to try to ask questions and get answers to things that will help the greater good and the decision be the right decision. And so if you know in your world that you're getting ready to make a decision, if that means, hey, I'm going out on a Friday night to shoot with my friends, or if you're a coach and that means you're going to make a decision on what scheme you're going to do, and how you're going to, carry yourself and do some things within your team, you got to ask a decision. Okay, what scheme am I running, and why am I running this scheme? Where has it worked? Where has it not worked? How has it been evolve, and if you're a player and you're saying, I'm going to go get some jump shots up, what kind of shots from what part of the court, and when will these be reduplicated in the game, and how can I do this at a speed that will mirror what I'll be doing in the game? And so I just think it's a series of questions that a lot of people get intellectually lazy on. They're not willing to ask unless it's a financial implications, or unless it has personal implications. Most people get intellectually lazy and just give in and make a decision because they're too busy worried about the wrong things. They don't answer the questions about the right things. And so I think the Patriots have been able to, over a long period of time before I got here, ask a lot of great questions of both their draft and their staff, and create a higher standard through letting the mistakes yield themselves before we actually get to football performance or building the team. And I think that that's true in life for all of us, is that we should ask more questions. We should ask, why are we doing this? We should ask what kind of shoes we're wearing and why. We should ask what type of shorts we're wearing and why. We should ask where we're playing and why, and who we're hanging out with and why. Because the more we ask questions, the more we're going to be forced to answers. And if the answers aren't good answers, then you're going to have to be forced to make changes. And it's okay to change and evolve, as you've seen with what we've done this year. It's to me, it's really about asking yourself hard questions and being willing to yield the results.
Well, let me ask you this: y'all are getting guys, and like you take guys that no one else wants or no one else thinks they can play, and y'all turn them into win another Super Bowl. I mean, it's amazing what you've done. So my question to you is, without giving us too much, because that's not the point of the podcast, is what questions, let's take a college basketball coach or a college football coach or even an employer. What questions should we be asking so we know, in basketball, I know the guy can run and jump. I know he can shoot the ball, but I don't know where his heart is. I don't know where his brain is. I don't know. I'm trying to follow his social media, but, I can't really tell what type of kid he is. How are you all diving in further than everybody else?
Well, I think that the first thing, John, and I think this is true of not just coaching, but any type of task that you're going to have is, do you love what you're doing? I think you've got to ask that question. I think we've kind of changed, and we've made the first question for most of these people, are you good at what you're doing, and how good are you at what you're doing? And that's really not the first question we should be asking, bud. The first question we should be asking is, do you love what you're doing? Because when you add pressure to pressure, let's say pressure plus expectations plus repeat performance plus multitudes of circumstances plus bad adversity plus injury and plus gossip, slander, and a bunch of other sins on top of it, you're not going to fight through all that unless you love what you're doing. And so I think the first question you have to ask whoever you're looking at working with, if it's a college, if it's a guy that you're looking at hiring as an assistant coach, I think you got to ask them, do they love what they're doing? And then ask them, how would you demonstrate your love for that? Because we all follow what we love. We all follow what we love. Follow what we love, whether it's subconsciously or consciously. We're willing to chase after what we love. We're willing to sacrifice for what we love. And if you don't really love what you're doing, then you're going to have a ceiling that's set before we even get started. If you love what you're doing, then great things can happen. Great things can happen. And pretty much anything at that point is possible.
Let me throw this real quick at you, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but we've had this conversation before in a podcast, and the question that the coach asks his recruits is very simple. So I'm going to ask you right now, Jack, because I know you loved basketball, all right? And so you're going to come into my office, and I'm going to say, Jack, do you like basketball, son? And what's your answer going to be?
No, Coach, I don't like basketball. I love it.
There you go. And so he asked that question, do you like basketball? And some kids will say, yeah, I like it. And or some kids will say, no, Coach, I don't like basketball. I love basketball. It's my life. I love it. So there is.
Well, let me back you up though, because one of the things that I've learned about that question is because there's an anticipated response to that question. Okay. You can't ask that question first. You have to ask a different question first, okay? So if your son, you got, let's see, Max. What's your kid's name? I forget. Max.
God, make an effort, Jack. I mean, I thought you loved my family. Max, Tanner, and J.C. Schulman. You probably don't even know J.C., nor do you care. That
Okay,
hurts
here we
me
go.
on air.
So here we go. So we got Max Schulman sitting in front of me, and I'm going to try to figure out whether he likes basketball, whether he really loves basketball, or whether he's just doing this.
Yeah. So what
Okay.
are you gonna ask him?
So Max sits in front of me, and he sits down in the chair. I say, "Hey, Max, how you doing?" "Man, I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad to be here." "Good, good. All right, great. What you been up to? What you been doing recently?" All right. And off the bat, I'm going to look for how many times he's mentioning the word basketball in that sentence. Okay. So I'm not really going to ask him a cheesy question that says, "Do you like basketball?" because he can set me up with a bunch of, fake answers that he can, just check the box with on that.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking for what have you been doing over the last 3 or 4 weeks? What have you been doing in your training? How much is your life adapted around basketball? How much do you make time for basketball? I'm looking for him to share his schedule with me so he can show me how much he loves basketball. So let's say he says, "Hey, well, I've been shooting at the gym, and I've been working out and doing some things." And my follow up question was, "Well, who's been with you? People been with you? Are they better than you? Do you think they're better than you?" And then if he says to me, "Nah, ain't nobody better than me," then off the bat I'm going to know that his desire to be the best in his group is good enough for him. So now I've established that he kind of likes basketball because he's practicing on his own, but he's hanging out with people that are just as good or worse than him, and he doesn't really want to go get challenged and get exposed. So now I've got, on the first two questions, I've already got the fact that basketball is medium to high importance of him. And then on top of that, I've got the fact that he's probably not in a position where he's willing to be vulnerable because we don't know in the big picture whether or not he even knows what it's like to be challenged and be exposed when he's in a position like this. So that's how I would start.
See, I love it. So I mean, you're going. Let me ask you this: are you meeting with every free agent that comes up there, or every rookie that you all are bringing in, and are you meeting with those guys?
Our process is our process.
I got you. No,
Yeah.
it's it's the Patriot way. That's what makes you different. My question was going. One of my questions was going to be, what makes the Patriots the Patriots? I mean, every team's got 53 dudes out there running around. Every team's got money, but for some reason, the Patriots can bring in a Randy Moss. They can bring in these dudes, and all of a sudden they turn out to be different cats. And so in a simple way, what makes the Patriots the Patriots?
Well, I think you can't win until you keep from losing. So I think when you look at the trends in our society currently and what's going on, whether it's selfishness or whether it's, guys that are not about the team, or whether it's penalties or it's turnovers, I think currently in the economy we're in and the society we're in for football, I think you have to take an inventory and say what really costs most of these people these games. What costs these people the game? And first thing, you have to eliminate those. I think Bill does the best job in the history of the sport at eliminating things that will get in the way of winning, and that includes the people and the way we play as both the primary factors for those two things. Is you can't let things get in the way of you being proactive, you being effective, and you being efficient. And so I think that's where it starts. And then from there, day to day, again, you have to ask hard questions and you have to look deeper than most people are willing to look. And I would say both of those are true of our staff and our team, is that, we're going to eliminate anything that's going to cause us to lose, and we're going to take a harder look at it than most. And it's been a blessing to see how that's yielded some results.
Does every NFL team have a Jack Easterby?
I'm not sure. I think some teams have done some good research and have found what we're doing. I'm not sure, to be frank with you, what the structure is. I will tell you, having worked in two other franchises, there's a whole lot of different structures, and there's obviously been a lot of teams that have been successful a lot of different ways. So, whether it's people that help the team or serve the team in different capacities, I've seen a lot of different models that seem to be working for different people. So I think, I think every team is doing it the way they believe is right, and hopefully, serving the people the way that they think that they should be served.
Well, every business, every program, every sport organization, it's one constant. It's people, and
That's right.
I think we lose track of that. And I think that it's an X and O game, and it's who's the best defensive coordinator, who's the best offense coordinator, what are you doing X and O wise? Are you running the spread, or what do you? And at the end of the day, it comes back to people, and it looks like you all, because like you're a different cat. I've known you since you were a little kid, I feel like, but you've always been about people. And people, you don't care about an X from an O, but you do care about the difference between that Jimmy and that Joe. And so it looks like to me that you all put more time and effort into people, and then that's what makes an X really good, or an O really good, is the people in that spot.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. I think when you look at, I said this at the Super Bowl, it got a lot of traction. And we're really all human beings, not human doings, and we have to be honest about that, because if we become more human doings than human beings, we're only evaluating people for their performance. And remember, the best player on his worst day is just an average player. And so you have to understand that if you're not in a good place, if for whatever reason your heart, your soul, your mind is not in a good place, you're going to struggle. And that's all of us, right? As a father, as a husband, as a friend, as an elite athlete, that's all of us. So I think that one of the things, conditioning the mind, conditioning the heart, conditioning the soul, conditioning the body to perform in all types of circumstances involves investment from a multitude of resources, athletic training and psychology and consistency, and just, making people that understand the things that are going to be thrown at them and how those things are going to be handled. And so I would just say, in the big picture, my belief is that you cannot grow a collective franchise that's going to work traditionally and every year be successful without addressing the need for the people. The people have needs, and they need to be addressed, and if not, they'll be your downfall. My saying in the building is always that if your output exceeds your input, then your upkeep will be your downfall. Because the truth is that when we all put out every day, whatever job we have, and if all we do is put out, then we don't ever input, then our upkeep of us keeping ourselves right and healthy will be the downfall of us being able to put out the way people expect of us.
If you owned, see, I think if Coach Belichick was the CEO of Amazon, it would kill it. Or if he invents a new company, y'all would kill it. I think you all could be successful if you're a football. Tell me if you're football, basketball, or in a business. I think your structure would be successful because it's still about people. Correct?
Yeah, no, I've told Bill that a lot of times. I mean, I think Bill could do anything. He's such a good leader and is so thorough in all he does. I think, again, when you talk about looking at something, and this is the thing I respected about you as a coach, when you look at something, whether you should play man or zone, or you look at a recruit, should we get this guy or that guy, you have to make hard choices. And, I've said this a lot, the hard thing and the right thing are usually the same thing. The hard thing and the right thing are usually the same thing. And I think when you condition your mind to be okay to make hard choices and take a deeper dive and look at things closely, I think what you find more apt to actually, or an aesthetic desire in your own heart to have nothing less than absolute perfection and have it look as best it can look. And then you got a chance every day when you tee it up, or a chance every day when you tip it off, or a chance every day when you first get your practice started to be successful. So yeah, I think Coach could do anything, and I think his his non-willingness to compromise, but even beyond that, his willingness to look deep dives into research and study the things that really contribute to success.
I like that phrase, non-willingness to compromise. And I think a lot of coaches start compromising. A lot of coaches start compromising on drug test. Listen, I mean, it was the second test. He was eating a brownie. It wasn't. I didn't think that he made a mistake.
Well, and let me say this, John, because this is very important, and I learned this from Coach Conrady early in my career. Is I think what we don't do okay, is we don't attach the drug test or again, every drug test have a myriad of layers to them, but my point is, let's call it the character miss. We don't have the character, we don't attach the character miss to performance. You got to remember, if it's third down and 85,000 people are going nuts and it's high pressure, if I can't trust you not to be or if I can't trust you to be somewhere on time, or not to put something in your body that's going to harm you, how am I going to trust you to run exactly when I need you to take 8 steps and plant on the inside of your outside foot, look one way, turn over your right shoulder, and the ball be right behind you, catch it, get upfield, keep the ball secure, and get out of bounds in 3 seconds? How can I trust you to do that when I can't trust you to push away from a temptation when nobody's really looking? And so I think we haven't, as a society, attached the decision of the bad character moment to performance and what breeds successful organizations. And I think that's, to me, what coaches should do more is, if I can't trust this guy to do something that, and when nobody's looking, how can I trust him when everybody's looking?
Well, it goes back to, if you can't take care of your business off the field or off the court, how are you going to take care of it on the field or on the court?
That's right.
Did you not advance? Did you all not advance in Super Bowl because somebody was 4 inches offsides? Wasn't that you?
Yes, we in the Kansas City game. Yep.
So in the Kansas City game, in the AFC Championship game, didn't you have a third down? Maybe you did not complete, but Kansas City was 4 inches offsides in the neutral zone, correct?
Well, we actually had a third down that we threw a pick. Tom had a tipped ball that ended up in an interception, and one of their defenders lined up offsides on the far side.
So when you try that ring on, and you're trying that ring on, that Super Bowl championship ring, think about that. Think about going back to eliminate the things that will help you lose. And I'm not,
And here's my point to you, John, and I think all the coaches that listen to this, or anybody who you're leading, which I know you lead with detail, John, but here's the point. You cannot separate the two, because there is probably 5 million of those throughout the season. I could give you moments at Buffalo or Monday Night Football. I could give you moments throughout the year where, again, if you don't have everybody there on time, you have to discipline a player and he doesn't play, and that forces another player into a different role. I mean, football is the ultimate team sport because there's so many people involved, from trainers to people who cut the grass and how long the grass is, to equipment managers who help the guys be fit for what they're doing. I think if you can't count on everybody to do their job, and I think the big picture is just a huge plate tectonics and domino effect to the whole entire building if you're not right. That's the truth.
All right, I got 2 more questions for you, then we're going to let you go and be a celebrity. Give young coaches and young players, group them in 2. They want to be successful. Give them some advice as they're starting their coaching career or starting their playing career. Give them 2 or 3 things that they have to do if they want to one day be on your level as a pro in whatever sport they want to.
Well, I would say the number one thing, John, is that they need to research and study all the people that in this business, or in the business that they want to be in, or even in the sport they want to be in, that had some pretty massive flaws and failures. So, for example, if you're in basketball and you want to study and you want to be a college basketball coach, you need to study a couple college basketball coaches who rose all the way to the top and then had an NCAA investigation that cost them their job. If you want to be a college football coach, you need to study coaches that rose to the top and then had staff problems within their staff when they got to the top. Because the truth is that you can't. Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it, and you can't be great until you eliminate the things that are in the way, and you make convictions. You build convictions in your soul that will allow you to be a good decision maker. And so when for example, that performance enhancing drugs, don't make you better, and they're shortcuts, and really hard work is what takes you there. You can't all of a sudden, once you become a little bit good and you've gotten past the first threshold of your career, start taking things that you think will be shortcuts. You've got to commit to that process. And I think so. The first step is to study people who have been in your field enough that you know without a shadow of a doubt what the compromises that will come at you are, and you know your stances on those compromises, and you write letters to yourself that you will not change when you get to the top level. And the truth of this is that there's a massive group of people that change as they grow and as they are successful, and that results in their failure. So I think that that's number one, is research all the people in your field that have been moderately successful and right on the edge of becoming really successful. They did something awesome. Research what those things were and write a letter to yourself that you will not repeat those things and you will not participate in those things, because no matter what happens, you can't do that, because in the end, that'll cost you, and you can't compromise. That's number one. I think the second thing is, I think you have to create a process that is more than just hard work and smart work, that refills and refuels you 4 or 5 times a year. You have to get with mentors. You have to read books about things that aren't about your specific trade. You have to read about history, read a book on, Winston Churchill, read a book on something different. Because again, if all you do is work and try to get better at what your trade is, and you don't refuel yourself with concepts and ideas and maybe things that are totally different than the way you see it, you just won't get any better. And so I would just say the first two things, if you are looking to be great, is look at people who have failed in that profession and have made fools of themselves by their poor decision making, and concede and make sure you promise yourself that you will not make those same decisions. And then secondly, set yourself up 4 times a year to have growth mechanisms that are more than just gossiping and sitting in a corner and talk about who's going to get what job, and actually grow. Learn about trends, learn about things that are happening around the world in your business, and that'll give you a big leg up on almost anybody.
I knew you were good, man. I didn't know you were this good. I'm not even sure I could get you back to lead the high school group at Baylor School anymore with your knowledge now. I mean, would you do it again? I mean, we pay you $112.
Hey, listen, I would do it every time I could. It's a great opportunity to learn and get better.
All right, my last question. All right, and answer it how you want to answer it, but you don't have to dive into it too deep. And I think a lot of coaches let one loss turn into two turn into four, and now you're in a slide you can't get over because you lose one that you shouldn't have lost. And I want to know, because I watched your Dolphins game. That was in Miami, correct?
Yes.
And I watch how you lost that game, and that was brutal. In last play of the game, and there's no way that happens to the Patriots. No way that could ever happen to the Patriots, but it did. I want to know how, as an organization or Coach Belichick, how does he handle that to help young coaches get over when, I saw just Northern Illinois won on a half-court fluke shot. How do you get over those type losses? How does the elite, and you all are the elite, how does the elite get over those type losses?
Well, John, I think one of the things I really enjoyed being around you and when you were coaching is you had processes. You had processes for how you were going to put in a new zone defense, and you had a process for how you were going to recruit. You had a process for how you were going to evaluate the opponent. You had a process for your scouting reports. And so what happens is when you have a failure, if you have a flat tire on the car and you lose a game, like Miami, you can't make a collective analysis that allows you to be pass-fail in your entire program. You have to go back to that specific process. So for us, that was just the end of the game. We just had to practice it. We got to go over it, check that one play, and make sure that we've got that play down and we have the right people on the field, that we have the right circumstances lined up and things that we're doing, and making sure that we've got our I's dotted and our T's crossed. And then once we fix that, everything else was fine because we had the game won other than that.
God, it's so simple. That is such a good – you have no idea. For a basketball coach to listen to what you just said is like heaven. Is very comforting, because what you do is you lose that game and now your whole program is terrible and your team's terrible, and life is gloom and doom, instead of just working on the last 3 minutes of the game every single day in practice, you change everything, you change your lineup, and you end up costing yourself a job.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I would say that Coach Belichick does an amazing job of is when you think that your point is, let's call it a collective analysis, programs and shambles, whatever. When you make a collective analysis about an individual problem, then what you're showing your team is that you are not capable of diagnosing individual problems. You're showing them that you're a collective evaluator only. And collective evaluators, have a tough time in the mud. They have a tough time getting clean on one individual issue or one individual matchup or one individual circumstance. And because of Bill's incredible IQ and football genius, he's able to evaluate each individual overlap in a way that I think brings some real clarity and certainty to the long term, and but also at the same time brings clarity and certainty to each individual matchup. So I would have a process in place in which I evaluate things, evaluate my film, look at my film, and don't allow one play, one stretch, one run in the game, one turnover to collectively make you characterize a player or a person
Yeah.
as something based on one person, one instance. You want to make it yield itself over and over before you have to make that collective analysis.
Jack, all right. I lied to you. I got one more small question. All right. The Bill Belichick that we see, has he ever answered you in a behind closed doors in more than a one-word sentence? Like,
yeah.
So I mean, because he is like to me and to most coaches, like we're so envious of that guy when he sits at a press conference and they ask him a 15-minute question and he goes, "Yeah," and that's it. And I'm like, God, how cool is that guy? So when he answers you, does he say more than just one word?
He does. Bill, let me tell you something. Bill's vision and foresight and level of thinking is phenomenal. His explanations of everything are phenomenal. The way he communicates is phenomenal. We've the media is an awesome means to get messages out. The way we communicate now is the way I've always said it. And you'll relate to this, being a coach that's dealt with the media. The media is exciting but dangerous.
Oh, absolutely.
It's exciting but dangerous because the media allows you to communicate quicker and for news to travel faster and for people to communicate from China to Chattanooga. But in the big picture, it's also dangerous because the electronic communication lacks intimacy, and sometimes the quick reporting lacks depth and thorough evaluation. So I think that we're in an interesting culture right now as far as the media, and I think he has to lead the way he sees there. But his leadership depth with us is quite honestly, it's the best of all time. It's the best of all time, and I've learned so much.
How many rings you got?
I got 3.
So you got 3 rings.
Yeah, we won in 14 and 16 and 19. So it's been great. I was able to win a national championship with the baseball team in South Carolina when I was there. I was working close with them, and then won a couple NITs with Dave.
Maybe it's
South
not
Carolina.
Those other guys. Maybe it's you.
I don't know about that, man. I think it's been an opportunity to just try to get the best out of people. That's my goal, is to try to leave people better than I found them and get the best out of the entire group.
Well, I can honestly say you've done an unbelievable job, and we thank you for spending time with us. If people don't get something out of this, they're sleeping at the wheel. So thank you so much for sharing all that you do and sharing what you do with people, and just besides sharing it with us, thanks for what you do for those people, because what you do you're impacting people, and that's what we're all supposed to be doing.
Well, John, let me share this too, just in relationship to you and David's impact on my life. And I know Andrew's a part of this, and your family. I think that as we look at moving forward in life, we have to invest in others. We have to be able to give. And, there's only 2 types of people in the world. There's givers and takers. That's it. And I think when you took over as a head coach at Chattanooga, you were a giver. I think now, doing the different roles you've done since you've left there, you're still a giver. And I think 15 years from now, you'll be a giver. And so I think there's no greater compliment to our families and to our parents and to the ones that have raised us, invested in us, then we're givers. And I would just say thank you for being a giver to me and to people who run cross paths with you, and to Andrew and David. Thanks for being givers to representing their faith and who they are as people, as God has allowed them to do that in different platforms, because that's what we want to be known for. When we lay it down and people write about our lives, we just want people to say, man, he was a giver. He gave.
Well, you give me chills. That's what you give me. So thank you. I love you, man. I really appreciate you. I'm so excited that you're having this kind of success. You've always had it, but now you're kind of getting recognized for it, and you're having a blast. And but just really appreciate your time today and appreciate your friendship.
You got it. Hey, man, call me soon. Let's do it again.
All right,
Thanks so
take
much,
care.
John.
Thanks, man.
Okay.